Thank you, Nadja. Let me see if I can share my screen. And you see the
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
the slides? Okay. All right. Yeah, what can I say after these two presentations? Also, you know, my perspective is really bound by a particular interest and a particular experience. My particular interest is precisely on the link between decentralization reforms and local territorial development. My experience is limited to a few countries. Okay, so actually, as I look to decentralization reform in the region, these seem to me to be affected by two major syndromes. At least this is what I captured in the three countries I'm familiar with. The first, we could call it a laws without policy syndrome. Laws are enacted under political pressure and without first articulating the policy that they should reflect. What is such policy? What is decentralization for? This is the why question that Salim was asking before. Is it decentralization meant in particular to promote local territorial development? If not, what else? And if yes, how? So making explicit the objectives of the reform would really enable, as I say, the question that Salim raised, which is the why of this legislation, is not made explicit, and therefore it's very difficult also to have an informed and not just a perfunctory national debate. Also, because of the lack of this policy, it's very difficult to develop implementation strategies and programs that are needed to operationalize this reform and also coordinate external aid. So we have this problem of legislation which is orphan of a clear policy, but well-articulated policies, and that is not translated into programs, into strategies and programs. This, of course, is not a unique problem in MENA. Many other countries suffer from the same problem. But we must remember that elsewhere in Africa and Asia, many serious efforts have been made to articulate the decentralization policies and translate them into national strategies and programs. So one may ask, why not the MENA region? The second syndrome is what I would call decentralization without local autonomy. In many of the region's countries, decentralization reforms are not about empowering autonomous and accountable local authorities. They are rather about preventing the emergence of such authorities by extending the reach of the state in the country's periphery and attempting to increase the legitimacy of the state action by allowing people, representatives, local councillors, to influence this action and monitor it. So the question is what is that this decentralization reform aim for, and why we have this decentralization without local autonomy syndrome in the MENA region. Now you can move on. Actually, very briefly, before I move I try to show the syndromes at work in the three countries I am familiar with. Let me just spend a few words about what would be the policies that lead or that connect decentralization reforms to local territorial development. First of all, and this is very clear, that there is no understanding of the specificity of local territorial development. So local territorial development is equated with development in the territory, which is too generic as an expression to mean anything, and often is equated with localizing national development. This is also a very unsatisfactory definition, because I think as Selim was also implying, local development, it's rather a specific form of development which is endogenous and in the sense that it mobilizes a range of local resources, and first and foremost, the local social capital is incremental in the sense that it brings those resources to bear on national development effort as an additionality, and it is spatially integrated in the sense that it seeks to realize economies of scope through packages of synergetic investment, and it is multi-level in the sense that it relies on, for its planning and financing, on platform of negotiation and consultation at both local, supralocal, and infralocal. So this thing is not well understood. The other thing that is not well understood is that without local autonomy, little gains are possible, not only in terms of the expected allocative and productive efficiency of public resources that we expect from decentralization, but most importantly, no endogenous and incremental local economic development will be possible. So autonomy is absolutely critical. Yet we don't see it. Let's have a look at Jordan, for example. In Jordan, the decentralization without autonomy syndrome is fully evident. Municipalities, on one end, are de jure autonomous agencies, relatively autonomous agencies, although they are of the managerial specialized rather than governmental generalist type. But the law does not empower them with a general mandate for local development and for the welfare of their communities. So actually they are not about development, and decentralization in Jordan is not about municipalities. For example, last year, the Minister of Local Administration explained to the members of the lower house the role of municipality, and he said that it is providing services while decentralization entails development. I'm quoting the minister. He was trying to explain to the lawmakers the title of the new law, which is called Municipalities and Decentralization, to stress that they are two different things. This new law joins at the hip two previous laws, separate laws, one on municipality, the 41 to 2015, and one on this decentralization, the 49 2015, without really resulting in a comprehensive local authority law. Why? Because while municipalities are indeed local authorities but are not about development, governorates are about development but are not true local authorities, at least if we understand the latter as local governments that they have their own deliberative structures, so the council, as well as their own executives and their own administrations. So in fact, the new law, as the previous one, creates a governor council, but leaves the executive and administrative functions in the end of the state administration. This actually reflects the political economy of the reforms in Jordan, where decentralization is equated with participation through expanded political representation. And it is essentially seen as a mechanism to expand the people's ability to influence a relatively minor share of development spending by the state administration. not as a reform to empower local developmental local authorities and promote endogenous local development. The governorate model in Jordan was adopted when the call of the king for political development from below and the preference of the Ministry of Interior for empowering the governor came together after 10 years of walking in the wilderness between 2005 and 2015. And so they gave birth to this model. But we have to be aware that there is a third factor that could compromise any hope that this model actually improves things on the ground in any meaningful way. And that is that for this model to work, you have to have a substantial the concentration to the local agencies, local state agencies, and a substantial delegation of powers over them to the governor. And this in Jordan, it may prove more difficult than any genuine decentralization reforms, this delegation and deconcentration movement. Also, worldwide, the experience is that this double accountability of the concentrated administration to central ministries and local councils very seldom, if ever, works. Let's move to Yemen. In Yemen, the governorate model we could say was put on the ground 15 years before Jordan. It was the law. It was the law 4/2000 that created this model. And it set up this hybrid governance and administration structure at both governorate and district and municipal level. So once again, the attempt was not to set up autonomous and accountable local authorities and transfer to them responsibilities and resources, but rather to enable local elected councillors to exercise some form of direction and oversight over a relatively small portion of the national capital budget. The strategy behind, this is interesting because the strategy behind the law 4/2000 in Yemen was similar to that was deployed in the 80s vis-a-vis of the local development associations. Those were grassroots, essentially tribal self-help initiatives that the central state rushed to institutionalize and recast within a public administration framework to co-opt the tribal leaders and other local elites that were heading the movement and bring them back within the SANA-based political business complex. So the local development association experience was indeed a good example of the use of administrative decentralization rhetoric to constrain rather than support local autonomous initiatives, another variant of the syndrome I was talking about. There was a difference, however, in 2000, because at that point, Saleh's objectives was no longer to continue to co-opt the tribal elites, but actually to weaken them, because he had felt somehow that he had ended up hostage of those tribal elite. So the new district administrations were meant to deliver directly the patronage of the state to bypass the tribal mediation of such patronage. Now, in Yemen, the limits of this kind of reforms, of this governorate model, were recognized by many, and there were some attempts to go beyond that. In 2008, there was a a strategy was adopted. The name was National Strategy to Move Towards a Local Government System by 2020, which called for the setup of genuine local authorities. But the strategy was never translated into a national implementation program, and the fall of the Salles regime ended up the story. Again, in 2014, and this is interesting, the National Dialogue Conference in Yemen proposed subnational district and municipal authorities legally distinct from the state and with real fiscal autonomy, suggesting that the greatest impact on development would be made by district and municipal governments, regardless of the final choice of the federal or unitary system for the country as a whole. But of course, the start of the civil war did not allow this recommendation to be followed. However, it's if ever the process resumes in Yemen, these recommendations remain critical for any attempt to rebuild the Yemeni state from below. Finally, in Tunisia, in contrast with Yemen and Jordan, the prospect of local authorities in Tunisia, authorities that take responsibility for promoting local territorial development, are much better. And this was clear in Lean's diagram and other observations. While the principle of a general mandate for local development for municipalities is not enshrined in the Constitution, is not enshrined in the Constitution, it is, however, supported by the Article 17 of the Code of Local Authorities, which defines it as a competence of principle distinct from the attributions devolved by the law. This distinction between general mandate and specific function is something really we have not been paying too much attention, and is critical for the promotion of local economic or of local and territorial development, as we have just defined, as a specific form of development. So, in contrast with Yemen and Jordan, the decentralization without autonomy syndrome in Tunisia is not rooted in the law, but depends on the practice of state-municipal interaction. In particular, it depends on when and how regional local authorities will eventually be set up, and whether or not they will enable real partnership between local authorities and state administration to be developed. They also depend, and here Salim said something about that, which is particularly important for Tunisia. They also depend on a change in national policies for territorial cohesion and development, the urban, rural, and regional development policies. Because in Tunisia, like in Jordan, decentralization is not accompanied by a national place-based territorial cohesion and development policy. Okay, so let me just finish. Let me just finish by saying that we have this problem in Jordan, that in Tunisia, that the decentralization policy is not accompanied by national place-based territorial cohesion and development policy. This policy continues to emphasize spatial concentration of activities along the coast and related internal migration over the promotion of endogenous development of internal area and more balanced urban frameworks. Yet, despite these difficulties, decentralization reforms in Tunisia have already prompted some municipalities to rethink their developmental role, embrace their general mandate, and initiate a new process of comprehensive local development planning and management, which also is putting pressure on the state, particularly at the regional level, for more cooperative and productive partnership with local authorities. There is an interesting ongoing experience and initiative in the Buarada municipality and other municipalities in the Siliana region, which really deserve attention, as they may turn into a model for countrywide replication. And I stop here.